Ferrari has the best car on the grid right now. At least, that's what the lap times in Barcelona said. The best through the corners, the kindest on its tyres, 600ths off pole with a driver who hadn't won in nearly 2 years. There's only one problem, and the whole paddock knows what it is. On the straights, Ferrari is slow. This weekend in Austria, that changes, or it doesn't, and the whole 2026 title fight is about to find out which, because the engine they've been waiting for is finally here. So here is the situation Ferrari walks into at the Red Bull Ring. They have a car that can corner with anything on the planet. They have a driver who just ended a 686-day winless streak in the most dramatic way possible. And they have a 41-point gap to the championship leader that, for the first time all season, actually looks like it might be closeable. What they do not have, yet, is a power unit that can keep up on a straight line. Austria is where they try to fix that. And Austria, of every track on the calendar, is the one that tells you the truth the fastest. Think about what this circuit actually is. The lap takes barely over a minute to complete. Pole position runs in the low 1:03 range, one of the shortest laps of the entire season. It sits high in the Styrian Mountains, around 700 meters up, where the thinner air punishes cooling and helps engine efficiency. And packed into that tiny lap are 3 long straights and a string of heavy braking zones, which means the part of the lap spent at full throttle is huge. A track this short and this power-hungry does not let a car hide. If your engine is down, the stopwatch finds out in about 60 seconds. That is why this weekend matters more than the calendar position suggests, and why Ferrari's upgrade is the one everyone in the paddock is watching. Let's start with what Ferrari is actually bringing, because the details matter more than the headline. The big piece is a new version of the engine. Ferrari is preparing the third version of its 067/6 power unit, and it arrives at Austria under a rule written into the 2026 rules called ADUO. That stands for Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities, and it exists for one very clear reason. When the new power unit rules landed this season, the field did not arrive equal. Some engine makers nailed the idea straight away, others started behind. ADUO is the safety valve, a set allowance that lets the teams who fell behind on engine performance build their way back toward the front instead of being locked out for years. Ferrari sits in the group that needs it, and Austria is where they cash the first payment. To understand why ADUO matters so much, you have to understand what the 2026 engine rules really did. The power unit this year is split almost evenly between the petrol engine and the electric side. The petrol engine makes less than it used to, around 400 kilowatts, while the electric motor jumped to 350 kilowatts, nearly 3 times more powerful than last season. The old heat recovery motor was dropped completely. The fuel limit for a race was cut from 110 kilograms down to 70. In other words, the rules made efficiency king. The team that pulls the most from the least wins. And when the season opened, Ferrari was not that team. A DUO is their permission slip to become it. Here is the engineering at the heart of it, and it is genuinely clever. Ferrari's engine design is built around a steel alloy cylinder head, instead of the aluminium most engines use. Steel can take far higher heat before it fails. That sounds like a small material choice. It is not, because that room lets Ferrari run hotter, more aggressive burning without the engine tearing itself apart. From Austria onward, the intake air heat feeding into the intercooler climbs from over 100 degrees to over 115. Hotter, more complete, cleaner burning, more energy pulled out of every drop of fuel. In a formula where you only get 70 kilograms of it for the whole race, squeezing more out of every drop is not a small gain. It is the entire game. This is the work of Ferrari's engine department alongside Shell's laboratory in Hamburg, and it brings us to the second half of the package. Because an engine upgrade is only half the story, Ferrari is also introducing a brand new Shell fuel made just for this new engine design. The fuel and the engine are built as a pair. You cannot fully unlock one without the other, and that pairing is exactly why this is being treated as a single planned step rather than 2 separate tweaks. The fuel is tuned to burn the way the new engine wants it to burn. Together, they are meant to claw back some of the straight-line gap that has been holding the whole car back. Now, an honest note, because it matters. Even the engineers find it hard to separate how much of the gain comes from the new fuel and how much comes from the engine changes themselves. The two are so tied together that pulling them apart is almost impossible. What everyone agrees on is the direction. This is a step forward on the exact weakness that has defined Ferrari's season. How big a step is the question Austria answers on track, not on paper. And there is a catch that hangs over the whole weekend. As of the days before the race, this engine is running pending approval from the FIA. Not confirmed, pending. Ferrari intends to run it, but the governing body still has to sign it off. That single detail turns an upgrade story into a waiting game. If the approval lands in time, Ferrari runs the package for the first time at the perfect track. If it does not, the whole thing slides, and the title math waits another 2 weeks. Everything Ferrari has been building toward sits on a piece of paper that may or may not be stamped before the cars roll out. But the engine is not the only thing arriving in the garage. Ferrari is also bringing its second aerodynamic package of the season to Austria, building on the upgrades that worked in Barcelona. Remember, the chassis is already the strong part. This is a team adding more downforce and more polish to a car that was already the class of the field through the corners. The aero gets better, the engine gets stronger, and they arrive on the same weekend. That is not an accident. That is a team deciding that this is the moment to throw everything at the problem. So why does any of this rise above the usual upgrade noise that surrounds every race weekend? Why is this the one to watch out of everything coming to Austria? The answer came from the last person who would want to say it, the reigning world champion. Lando Norris was asked about Ferrari, and he did not give the polite, careful answer that drivers usually give about rivals. He said the quiet part out loud. His words. We're lucky that Ferrari doesn't have a better engine at the minute. If they had a better engine, they're dominating. They're the class of the field in terms of cornering performance. If they make improvements on the engine side, then they'll embarrass everyone. Read that again, because the world champion just described Ferrari as a car held back by one single part. Fix the engine, he is saying, and they don't just compete, they embarrass the grid. That is the whole idea behind this weekend, delivered by the man right now trying to beat them. And the evidence backs him up. Look at Barcelona. Lewis Hamilton put that Ferrari 6/100ths of a second off pole position, 6/100ths, in a car that by every measurement is down on power compared to the Mercedes and the Red Bull engines around it. He was making up that deficit somewhere, and that somewhere was the corners. The car was kinder on its tyres than anything else in the field across a long, punishing Spanish afternoon. Then he won the race. He timed a 3-stop plan and a well-placed virtual safety car to perfection, controlled the closing laps, and took the checkered flag. His first victory in Ferrari red, the 106th of his career, ending a winless streak that stretched back 686 days to the summer of 2024. A streak that a lot of people had quietly decided was never going to end. Behind him, Russell and Norris completed the podium, the first all-British top 3 in Formula One since 1968. That is how rare the day was. You have to go back more than half a century to find its match. That win did not just break a personal drought, it moved a number. Before Barcelona, the championship felt settled. After it, the gap between Hamilton and the leader sat at 41 points, and for the first time the chase looked real. Which brings us to the other half of the picture, the part that makes Ferrari's engine step so dangerous right now. The leader is Kimi Antonelli, and his Mercedes has a problem. Antonelli sits on 156 points. Hamilton is second on 115. Russell, the other Mercedes, is third. In the constructors' fight, Mercedes lead Ferrari by 72 points, a wide margin, but one built partly on a fast car and partly on a rival who could not use full engine power all season. The driver out front is 19 years old, in his first real title campaign, and quick enough to lead the World Championship. But quick has not been the issue. Twice this season, a Mercedes has shut down while running near the front. George Russell retired out of the lead in Canada. Antonelli himself retired out of second place in Barcelona, with 3 laps to go, having lost a near-certain podium and a fistful of points. The team's own engineers have admitted these failures come from the same broad area, the battery, and that they are working to bring in new battery parts to fix it. The team principal called the retirements very, very painful. And he is right to, because by one estimate, those 2 failures alone cost Mercedes around 43 points. That is roughly the size of the entire championship lead. Sit with that. The gap protecting Mercedes at the top is almost exactly the same size as the points their own breakdowns have already thrown away. The lead is real on paper, but in a way, it is borrowed. That is the spot Ferrari's upgrade lands into, a title leader who is quick but fragile, a challenger with the best chassis on the grid and a driver in form. And one missing ingredient, engine power, arriving at the exact track built to show whether it works. If you wanted to script a test weekend, you could not do better than this. Now, where this gets sharper is when you understand what the Red Bull Ring does to a power deficit specifically. This is not just any fast track. Under the new rules, the power unit splits its power almost evenly between the combustion engine and the electrical side. The electric motor, the MGUK, is now nearly 3 times more powerful than it was last year. The old DRS is gone, replaced by active wings that physically open on the straights to cut drag, then close them again for the corners. An energy use is run by an overtake system that hands a chasing car extra electrical boost when it gets within a second of the car ahead. That car gets a burst of extra energy and can hold full power to a higher speed before it runs out. All of that turns a short, straight heavy lap into an energy battle. How you spend your electrical energy, when you choose to dump it, and how much raw engine power you have underneath it to back it up, decides everything down those 3 straights. And this is the part that hurts a car like Ferrari's the most. When your combustion power is short, you lean harder on the battery to make up for it, and you run out of battery boost sooner down the straight. The car ahead, with more engine, sails on while you watch your speed fade off near the end of every straight. It is a weakness that feeds on itself. Less engine means more strain on the battery, which means earlier fade, which means you lose the place anyway. A real combustion gain does not just add top speed. It takes pressure off the whole energy system. That is why even a modest engine step can unlock more lap time than the raw horsepower number suggests, and why Ferrari has been so desperate to get this package on the car. This is exactly where Ferrari has been losing lap time all year. In the corners they take it back, on the straights they hand it over. At a normal circuit those two cancel out into a solid but beatable package, but Austria is not balanced. The full throttle share here is among the highest of the season, which tips the whole balance toward the thing Ferrari is worst at. Which means if the new engine and the new fuel deliver even a modest gain, this is the track where you will see it most clearly. And if they deliver nothing, this is the track where that becomes painfully clear too. If you're getting something out of this breakdown, take a second to subscribe. This channel goes deep on the technical fights behind the 2026 season every single week, and the Austria story is only just getting started. There is no neutral result here. Austria gives a verdict. Fred Vasseur, the man running Ferrari, framed the stakes himself before the weekend. He pointed out how incredibly tight the front of the field has become. After the Barcelona upgrades, he noted there were 4 teams covered by less than 0.3 of a second. Then he turned to this race and said he wanted to see the team step up a gear in Austria, on a track that takes just over a minute to lap. He knows what this circuit measures. 0.3, covering 4 teams, means the smallest gain shifts the whole order. On a 60-second lap, a tenth is the difference between pole and the second row. Ferrari is not bringing this package to look decent. They are bringing it to break a 4-way tie at the front. And they are not the only ones bringing new parts, which raises the stakes further. Because everyone arriving in Austria knows the same upgrade math, and several of Ferrari's rivals are loading their own cars with new parts. Start with the home team. Red Bull arrives at its own circuit with its second big package of the season, and the focus is weight. The car has been carrying a few kilograms more than the minimum allowed, and in this era of regulations, weight is lap time you are simply throwing away. Their target is to trim the car back down toward the limit of the rules. But the man in charge, Laurent Mekies, did something unusual. He talked the hopes down, hard. He said plainly that the Austria package alone will not be enough, that the gap they are chasing has shrunk, but is not closed. He even joked that his plan for the weekend was, quote, eat less. It was funny. It was also a quiet sign that Red Bull, at their home race, do not believe one upgrade fixes their season. When the home team is lowering the bar before the weekend even starts, you learn something about how the order has shifted. Then there is McLaren. And their upgrade comes with a strange twist. They are bringing what the team describes as a milestone package, maybe worth a few tenths, the kind of step that can turn a season around. But Austria is a sprint weekend, which means the cars enter locked Parc Fermé rules earlier than normal, fixing their setup sooner. So McLaren made a choice. Only Norris gets the new parts this weekend. His teammate, Oscar Piastri, has to wait until the next race at Silverstone to get the bulk of it, with the full package split across the following events. 1 car forward, 1 car waiting. On a weekend this tight, giving the upgrade to only 1 driver is a real gamble, and it tells you McLaren did not want to risk holding the parts back any longer. Further down the grid, the new team, Cadillac, is bringing what they are calling a big package for Austria, fighting their way toward the midfield after a first season still searching for its first point. Williams has smaller updates in the pipeline. And then there is the team on purpose doing the opposite. Aston Martin, with Adrian Newey now leading their tech side, is not bringing a major upgrade to Austria at all. Their big package is being held back, expected around the Belgian Grand Prix and the summer break, with their own engine step not expected until later still. They are playing a longer game, saving their development for a moment they think matters more. The picture that emerges across the paddock is consistent. Nobody is standing still, and everybody has made a careful bet about when to strike. Austria is not just Ferrari's checkpoint. It is a parts pile-up where half the grid shows up with new hardware on the one weekend that measures all of it without mercy. But here is the contrast that makes Ferrari's package stand out from all of that activity. Look at who is not bringing an engine answer. Mercedes, the championship leaders, are not bringing a new aerodynamic upgrade to Austria. Their whole focus right now is reliability, bringing in the battery fix that is supposed to stop their cars shutting down near the front. They are not pushing for speed this weekend. They are patching a leak. Their own technical director admitted the car updates will come, in his words, in due course, which is engineer speak for not yet. So the title leader arrives at a power-sensitive track, focused on simply finishing, while the team chasing them arrives with a new engine, a new fuel, and a new aero package all at once. That is the gap in mindset. One team is defending, the other is attacking with everything it has. And this is only the first move, because the Austria engine is not the end of Ferrari's plan. There is a second, bigger power unit step expected later in the year around the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort or Ferrari's home race at Monza, reported to be built around a bigger turbo. That later upgrade is the one Ferrari believes could bring them real power parity with Mercedes, closing the engine gap fully rather than just narrowing it. Austria is step one of two, which changes how you see this whole weekend. This is not Ferrari's big swing. This is Ferrari's opening jab, the first of a 1-2 punch aimed straight at the championship over the back half of the season. If the opening jab already lands at a track this demanding, the second one becomes truly scary for everyone ahead of them. There is one more piece to this. Charles Leclerc sits fourth in the championship, and he qualifies as well as anyone on the grid when the car gives him something to work with. A Ferrari that finally has straight-line speed does not just lift Hamilton. It hands Leclerc a weapon too, which means Ferrari could suddenly be fighting at the front with both cars, rather than one. For a team trying to claw back a 72-point constructors' deficit, two cars in the fight is not a luxury, it is the only math that works. The engine step is not just about one driver's title chase, it is about turning a one-car threat into a two-car problem for everyone ahead. So what are we actually watching for when the cars hit the track in Austria? A few specific things tell the whole story. Watch the speed traps and the straight-line numbers first. That is the clearest measure of whether the engine and fuel package has done its job. If Ferrari has closed even part of its deficit down the long straights of the Red Bull Ring, it shows up there before anywhere else. Watch where Hamilton and Charles Leclerc qualify. And by how much. On a lap this short, tenths are mountains, and the gap to pole tells you everything about whether the package worked. Watch whether the corners stay as strong as Barcelona while the straights improve, because that combination, world-class cornering plus a fixed engine, is the exact thing Norris warned about. And watch Mercedes. Watch whether the battery fix holds, whether a car can run at the front for a full distance without the electrical system giving out. Because the title math only stays close if both halves stay true. Ferrari has to find the power, Mercedes has to stop braking. The deeper truth under all of this is simple. Ferrari spent this season being the team that was almost there. Fast enough to threaten, never quite fast enough to convert, held back by the one part they could not build freely until the rules let them. Austria is the first weekend where that limit comes off. For the first time, the missing piece is in the car. Not promised, not coming soon, in the car on the most telling track of the year. Whether it changes them or just nudges them, we find out across one short, relentless lap repeated 71 times on Sunday. The fastest cornering car in Formula One finally gets to answer the only question it has not been able to answer all year. Can it go fast in a straight line too? If the answer is yes, the world champion's warning stops being a compliment and starts being a prediction. And the 41 points protecting the top of the championship start to look a lot more fragile than they did a week ago. Austria does not deal in maybes. By Sunday evening, we will know exactly what Ferrari brought to the mountains. The only question left is whether the rest of the grid is ready for the answer. If you want the full verdict the moment this package hits the track, subscribe and turn on notifications. We break down every upgrade, every result, and every twist in the 2026 title fight. And the Austria story is about to get its first real answer.